at the bottom of 36b, and we were discussing. Sorry, the Gemara had said that Yosef sanctified God's name in private, and so he was rewarded. And Yehuda sanctified God's name publicly, so he was rewarded in a greater measure. So yesterday we discussed Yosef. Today we continue with Yehuda. Second line from the bottom towards the end of the line, 36b. Yehuda Mahi. What are we talking about? What's the story with Yehuda? The Tanya, so Mary is saying, when the people were standing at the by the Red Sea, the Yam Suf, the tribes were competing against one another. Everybody was pushing their way to the front, trying to be the first one to go into the sea. So the tribe of Binyamin jumped ahead, and they went in first. Shenamar, as it says in Tehillim, Shem Binyamin Sair Rodem. Sham Binyamin Sair Rodem. There is Binyamin the youngest, and he is the one that drives them, that rules them. Al-Trike Rodem, El Rad Yam. It's a play on the word Rodem. You can read it as Rad Yam. Went into the sea. And so the other leaders of Yehuda, would started throwing stones at them. Shenemar Sar Yehuda Rig Masam. The verse continues. The princes, the officers of Yehuda, Rig Masam, reading it as stoning them. So what was Binyamin's reward? He became the host to God. That is, the temple was built in Binyamin's portion of the land. And the bracha given to Binyamin by Moshe, it says, God will rest between his shoulders, on his shoulders, excuse me, indicating that God's presence is in Binyamin's portion. That's not how it happened. Nobody wanted to be first. Nobody, they were afraid to go into the sea. It was, you could drown. This is the more popularly known version of the Medrash. Nachshon, son of Aminadav, who was the leader of Yehuda, jumped ahead. He went in first. Shnemar Sivavuni b'kachash Ephraim u'Mirma beis Yisrael. Ephraim surrounded me with falsehood, and the house of Israel has surrounded me with lies. Yehuda od rad im el, but Yehuda still ruled with God. And again, it's the same play on words. We're going to read rad as raid, as going down. Into the sea. And about Nachshon ben Aminadav, who went down first, it is written about him in Kabbalah, which is an interesting word. In modern language, Kabbalah refers to mystical traditions, but here it's referring to Tanakh, to Ksuvim, specifically Tehillim. Save me, God, for the waters have come up to my soul. Tavati bi'vein metzula vein ma'amad. I'm sunk in the deeps, in the depths, and there's nowhere to stand. Alti shtefeni shibos mayim. Don't let the water sweep me away. The alti v'leini metzula. Let the deep not swallow me up. So what is this? How are we interpreting this? But Moshe was praying. They were at the Red Sea. The water was there. The Egyptians were behind them. Moshe was praying. God said to him, my dear people are going to drown in the sea. You're standing here praying. What am I supposed to do? What are we supposed to jump into the sea? Yeah, tell the people to start marching. You lift up your staff and split the sea. And so then Nachshon was the first one to jump in, and everyone else followed, and the sea split. Therefore, Yehuda, Nachshon's tribe, became the leader, the tribe of the kings, the ruling tribe. Shanamar, Haisayu Lakacho, Yisrael Mamshalom. In Tehillim, the chapter that we read in Hallel about the splitting of the sea, Yehuda became God's holy one, and Israel became his subjects. Matam Chaisa Yehuda Lakacho Yisrael Mamshalom. Why? Mishum Hayam Ravayanos, because the sea saw, the next verse, the sea saw and fled. Why did it see? It saw Yehuda jumping in first. Yehuda jumping in first. Okay, back to Hargrizim and Harival. Tanya, Ibn Reiser, Melazar ben Yaakov Omer. Ef Shalom Levi Lamata. Where was Levi standing? You can't say they were in the valley. They were standing in between the mountains. Because it says that they were one of the tribes chosen to stand on Har Grizim. But you can't say they were standing on Har Grizim, because it says that they were standing in the middle. Because when they act and when it's recorded how they actually did it, it says that Levi stood in the valley between the mountains. Okay, so what really happened? It wasn't all of the Levim that were in the middle. It was the elders of the Kohanim and Levim who were in the middle in the valley, and the rest of the tribe of Levi was where they were supposed to be on Har Grizim. Rabbi Yoshi says, it wasn't just the elders; it was anybody who was eligible to do the work of the Levim, which is to carry the Mishkan from place to place. They were the ones that sat and generally speaking, that was, I think, those who were between 20 and 50, males who were between 20 and 50. Everybody else was part of the audience, and they went up to Har Grizim with the other tribes. Rabbi says, no, really everybody was standing in the valley. Hafchu panehem klape Har Grizim, and then for the bracha, upaslu bracha, so the instructions were, these should stand to bless the people on Har Grizim. So what that means is they were in the valley and they turned towards Har Grizim and said the bracha, klape Hareval u'klala, and then the curse they turned towards Hareval. My al. So what does it mean when the Torah instructs to stand al Har Grizim on the mountain? Al b'samuch means nearby. It doesn't mean on the mountain. It means near the mountain. So it's not really a problem. Kedetanya, where do we see a similar idea? Sotah al hamarachas levana zaka. In the instructions for the Mishkan, it says you should put on the framework of the shulchan on the table. You put levana, and it says al. Rabbi Omer al b'samuch. Rabbi says it's nearby, not near the. Not on the lechem apanim, on the bread, but near. Ata Omer al b'samuch. You want to say it means nearby. Maybe al means really on. It's literally, that's what it means. Omer sakosa al ha'aron, when it says that you should put there's a like a screen of curtains between the holy of holy, the kodesh hakadashim, and the rest of the Mishkan. So it says put this curtain, this separation on the ark. It didn't go on the ark; it went next to the ark. So it must mean besama. And we use the word al, so al can mean next to. So hafchu pneim klape Har Grizim pasuk bracha. So you said that the Mishnah said that they turned towards Har Grizim and started with the bracha. Tana Rabbanan baruch bichlal baruch biprat. There was a general blessing and then a specific blessing. Or bichlal or biprat. A general curse and a specific curse. In other words, the general is, so there's specific things that they were instructed to bless and curse about. Arura ish asher yaseh pesel masecha, for example, cursed is someone who makes an idol. But then at the end, it wraps it up. The Torah wraps it up and says, Arura asher lo yakim es divrei haTorah. Cursed is everyone who doesn't uphold all the words of this Torah. So that's a general curse and corresponding blessing. Lulmod ulami lishmor velasos. Now, with regard to any mitzvah, you're supposed to, the Torah tells us elsewhere, to learn it, to teach it, to observe it, and to do it, right? To guard it and to do it. So there's 4 verbs that are relevant to any mitzvah. So so that's four. So each mitzvah really has four aspects to it: learning it, teaching it, lishmar, to guard it. Not sure what that means exactly, and to do it. So arba harishmana. So for each blessing and curse, there's a fourfold about the specific and a fourfold about the general, which the Gemara is saying was repeated for each specific. Then there's eight harishmana, so that's eight kind of pronouncements, or you can call them agreements, covenants for each mitzvah. Shmona harisheshis, right? And then there's the bracha and the klala, right? The blessing and the curse. So 8 plus 8 there's 16 statements. Sinai, and the same happened at Sinai at the Revelation. Moab, and then the brit of the wilderness of Moab before they, at the end of Moshe's life, when Moshe recommitted them to the covenant, the same. We're going to go the same way, 4 for each positive expression of the mitzvah, and then 4 for each for a general, for including that in a general admonition to keep the mitzvah. And then there's the negative aspect, the curse for those who don't keep it. That's another 8. That's 16 for each. And how do I know that this happened in each of these instances? This is the covenant which God commanded Moshe. And then it says, Milvad Habrisa Shakara Sita Macharav. Besides the Sinai covenant, there was the Moab, the desert of Moab covenant. Uksiv. So they're linked. Uksiv Shmartim is Divrei HaBrisas. You should observe the words of this brit, of this covenant. Nimsa Arba Shmona Brisas are called mitzvah. So if you have 16 3 times, that's 48. So every mitzvah has 48 covenants with it. What does that mean exactly? Like they promised, or they were admonished 48 times on each mitzvah. It's not exactly clear. It's one of these numbers games that the Gemara likes to play sometimes. Rabbi Shimon Motzi Hargrizim Mahareval. Rabbi Shimon agrees with the calculation, but he doesn't think that he's not counting the blessings and curses of Hargrizim and Hareval. He is instead including the covenant of the Ohel Moed in the desert. So, in other words, there's no indication to Rabbi Shimon that at Hargrizim and Hareval that all the mitzvahs of the Torah were included. It says these specific ones. There were like a dozen specific blessings and curses that were indicated, not the whole Torah. So he makes up the 48 by looking to the what was taught at the Ohel Moed, which Moshe set up after the revelation itself. And this is an argument of another related to another argument of Tanaim. D'Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Klaus number b'Sinai. What was told to Moshe at Sinai, the general principles, the pratos v'Ohel Moed, and then the details in the Ohel Moed, which he set up after the revelation, right? So, in the 40 days that Moshe was on Har Sinai, he got the general outline of what the Torah was from you, and the details came later. Kiva Omer, Klaus upratos number Sinai. No, what was he doing up there for 40 days? The whole thing, the whole Torah, rule, principles, and details. V'nishnu b'Ohel Moed. So what happened in the Ohel Moed that he set up afterwards? They were repeated to him. You got to do chazara. You have to repeat your learning if you want to stick. V'nishtalshu b'Arbos Moab. And what happened in the desert of Moab? That they were taught a third time by Moshe to the people. Okay. The Gemara is reiterating every detail in the Torah, every mitzvah in the Torah has a 48-fold covenant, as we said before. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda ish kvar ako, Amar Mishum Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said, "Ein lecha mitzvah sheksuda b'torah shel nichrusu aleha arbayim u'shmona brisos shel sheish me'os elef u'shloshes alefim v'chamesh me'os v'chamishim." There weren't 48 covenants on each mitzvah. There were 48 times 603,550, which is the number of the people in the census, right? So. Does Gemara spell this out, or am I supposed to explain it here? So the idea is that since every person has a responsibility for every other person, if I'm one of a nation of 600,000 people, then every mitzvah that I have is actually 600,000 mitzvahs, because I'm responsible for you and you and you and you, right? We're all in this together. Right. So, and then if each one is repeated 48 times, you have to multiply that by 48. So you come up with however many hundreds of millions of covenants that number comes to. I'm a Rebbe, so Rebbe says, according to that statement, Nimsa, so according to that statement, Nimsa lekol echad v'echad Yisrael sheish me'os elef v'shloshes alafim v'chamesh me'os v'chamishim. So you have to multiply it again by 603,000, because when I'm responsible for you, you're also responsible for 600,000 other people, right? So I'm responsible for 600,000 people time. So really what it should be saying is 603,550 factorial, right? Because, I'm responsible for the 600,000 other people. Each one of them is responsible for, for the other 600,000 people, but less one, because me, like we're focusing on me. Anyway, it's a big number. How many digits in 603,550 factorial? I can't even begin to imagine. A lot. Now. So what's the argument here? Are we counting just my responsibility for you, or are we counting my responsibility for you and your responsibility for somebody else? Okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yehuda, who was the announcer or the translator of Reish Lakish, the way that the teachers would give lectures in the academy, Gemara refers to this several times, is that just because you're a great teacher doesn't mean you have a great voice, right? So the teacher with the knowledge, he gives his lecture, but in order for the people in the back to hear, he had an announcer who would repeat what he says, in a way that people could hear, or there may have been some translation or explanation involved as well. So anyway, this guy was the announcer. So he said, Kol ha-parsha kula, but apparently this is something that he came up with on his own, or his own tradition. Kol ha-parsha kula never b'noif in the The whole chapter of the blessings and curses was about adultery. How do you figure that? As I mentioned, the first one is cursed is a person who makes an idol. But it doesn't have to say the man. Cursed is the man. It could say Arur Asher Yaseh. Like cursed is whoever makes an idol, but it says cursed is the man. So what does it mean? What's the extra word? No, I'm sorry. That's not what it's getting at. It's Ba'ara Sagile is a question. It's like, is that all you get for making an idol? You just get a curse? As the Torah delineates punishments, is death sentence for that. It's not just a curse. It's referring to somebody who committed adultery and produced a child. So, the natural or the expected result of that is a mamzer is kind of is kind of barred from participating in the community, in the sense he can't marry within the community. So you can expect that he's going to go out, he's going to leave the community and become an idol worshiper. So arurin avi v'imo shelzeh. So the parents who committed adultery, they're besides whatever punishment, if they're caught, whatever punishment they deserve and they receive, whether or not they're caught, um, they should be cursed. They are being cursed here for um, for the results of their actions. Not so it's not just the liability for the action; it's also the curse applies to the effects of what they did, and presumably one can kind of find a way to say this about all the other blessings and curses, that they're really about adultery. So not fixated on adultery or anything, but that's his drasha, is that everything bad in the world, or everything that is being identified as cursable, is a result of adultery. But we're not thinking about sex all the time. Son Rabbi stop. And the Sotah sabracha al har grizim klal har eval. The bracha is delivered on har grizim, or towards har grizim, and the curse towards har eval. Matal and why? What's it telling us? Im lamed shetei bracha har grizim klal har eval. If we're actually like cursing the mountain itself, you're putting the bracha on har grizim. Like, are you blessing or cursing the mountains? It already says this is where everybody should stand. And this is where everybody should stand for the people and the bracha contingent were standing on har grizim, and the others were standing on har eval. So when it says Sotah sabracha al har grizim, it's like klal har eval, it's kind of repetitive, but what it's saying is, what do you do first? First the bracha and then the klal. You call a brachos kodmos l'klalos. So does that mean you give all the brachos first and then all the klalos? Talmud bracha al klal. It says it in singular. You put the singular bracha on har grizim and the singular bracha on klal on har eval. So bracha is kodmos l'klala. So they call brachos kodmos l'klala. So you do one blessing, one curse, one blessing, one curse, one blessing, one curse. Uvahakish bracha l'klala. Vein kol brachos kodmos l'klalos. And why don't you do it that way? Why don't you do all the brachos first and then all the klalos? Lahakish bracha l'klal lomar lach. It tells you ma klal b'levim af bracha b'levim, that it's the levim who did all the pronouncements. Ma klal b'kol ram, and just as the curse was delivered in a loud voice, because when the Torah recounts what happens, what's supposed to happen, it actually delineates only the klalos, only the curses, right? It says give all the blessings and curses, and here are the specific curses, and there were presumably corresponding blessings. So the blessings were delivered in the same manner, in a loud voice. Just as it had to be in Hebrew, is where we started with the Mishnah, that this is something that had to be done in Hebrew. The bracha had to be done in Hebrew. Just as we have the sum up general rule, curse on anyone who doesn't uphold this Torah. So you have a blessing, also a general blessing. Anyone who does uphold the Torah. And just as we're instructed specifically about the curses to the people all said Amen, the same thing with the bracha. So too, everybody answered Amen about the bracha. And that is the end of the long discussion of the crossing of the Yarden and the brachos on har grizim and har eval. And tomorrow we'll pick up with the Mishnah, which talks about birchas kohanim. Mentioned that birchas kohanim has to be done in Hebrew, and the Mishnah will go into detail of how exactly you do birchas kohanim. Shabbos.
Have a good